My name is Nan, and you are on episode 5 of Why Blood, Same Blood. I am so excited for today's episode because I did a lot of research, breakdown, I got technical, I have some frameworks and all. So these are always very fun for me to prep, write, record, and edit. So today, the topic is villains in South Indian cinema. This one is a big loaded topic, so I have tried my best to condense it and categorize it. So let's get into it. Okay, the first segment, I'm going to call it the villain origin story. Let's start at the very basics. Who is a villain? At the most bare bones 101 level, villain is the bad guy. He's the ketaman. Right from a young age, we grow up hearing stories of good versus bad, and Adigalathilerundu, irrespective of region or religion, the formula in every epic is that of good versus evil, and what we celebrate is the triumph of hero over villain. Over time, the stories have evolved, as have humans, but at the core, hero is hero, villain is villain. Yaroda story in the matter. Having said that, I truly believe a story is only as great as its villain. Because when I think about some of the most iconic films, they all have super memorable villains that the hero has to overcome. More powerful the villain, higher the stakes, sweeter the victory. We will talk examples in greater detail, but just off the top of my head, if I think great villains, Neelambari comes to mind, the Joker, Mark Antony from Basha, Muthupandi from Gilli, Balaladeva from Bahubali, Alauddin Khilji from Padmavat. All of these movies, I think, their success can be attributed to these iconic villains. All of them are powerful, ruthless, smart, sexy, scary, and overall super iconic. Yes, the story is great, but the story is after all about these amazing villains giving summer tough to the hero. Also, my hypothesis at this point is that ஒரு weak villain இருந்தா the story won't land. So correlation equals causation ஆன்னு கேட்டா it seems so because I'm not able to think of an example where a movie had a weak villain but still did well. When I say did well, I mean like, oh, it was a good story. Of course, in the box office, kada vera. But as we talk more examples, we'll see if this actually holds true. Going into the next part, which is in cinema, most of us enjoy a good villain. They add a lot to cinema itself, and we have so many super memorable villains. But why do we like villains so much? Abdinu paatha எனக்கு ஒரு few theories இருக்கு. Number one, the villains are the ones who make it interesting by initiating a conflict, and they push the lead characters out of their comfort zone. Like actually paatha, நம்ம traditional hero villain stories la hero is minding their own business, Shivaji or like Endiran, where in both cases superstar is just doing his job or doing a good job, but the villains, Adiseshan or Bora, they come in and throw a wrench in their plans. And therein begins the conflict. Therein is the story what the hero has to solve. Villains only initiate everything and make it interesting. So that's number one. Number two, villains give us a point of reference to compare good to bad. இது வந்து more complex stories க்கு பொருந்தும். Ayan is a great example. Kamlesh is outright bad.
Chala nearda.
He is the main villain. He kills his own father. So he's really bad. But Dosna, Prabhu's character, he still runs a kadathal business, but he's not as bad because he'll say, drug business la panna maten. And then we have Chitti, who is also on the wrong because he is Kamlesh oda aalu. But kadasila, he is a victim to the system madri they will show. And then Deva itself, he's a smart boy, but he's in the tappana vari, or maybe he's following his dad's footsteps, all of that. But finally, he gets out and becomes an officer. So because Kamlesh is the baddest, everyone else seems a little more like grey or white. Another reason is villains give us an opportunity to take the moral high ground. One, we can say, oh, I'm not that bad. Ivlo moso illa na abdinu. But also, when it plays out on screen, we are like, oh, this guy needs to be punished or this woman needs to be bashed. We love it when the hero fights back and the villain gets what they deserve. Vishwarupamla vara satisfaction when Andavar transforms and then hits everybody. Or Gilli climax fight scene where it's like absolutely great to see him bash Muthupandi and he gets what he deserves. Same way in Shivaji, Adiseshan, at the end, he literally dies at the hands or legs of the students he cheated. We get that thrill, oh, a bad person is getting what they deserve. But on the flip side, another reason is villains let their intrusive thoughts win. Watching that indulgence play out on screen is fun and it's even cathartic. The disclaimer, of course, is that these are cheap thrills. So they're not playing by the rules. When the treatment is right, it's fun to watch villains not play by the rules. Next one, the villains also have a little bit of greatness attached to them because they have a lot of kolgai or principle that they abide by. If you take Silence of the Lamb, Hannibal Lecter, he actually does not harm the girl. In fact, towards the end, he's the one that will protect her. So, andha vagaila, they are very righteous, they are unpredictable, but they are reliable in some sense. And speaking of reliability, villains have a really strong, loyal team. Although that's built on fear, still strong nonetheless. I really liked how in Shivaji, they use that trope to their advantage, which is the Adiyalunga of Adiseshan will be like, oh, I will do anything for him. But Shivaji will be like, do the same, but I will do good for you. So I really liked how they flipped the trope in that. And then lastly, I'm partly joking when I say this, villains really embody the corporate poster child. Think about it. Villains are motivated. They are pushing the envelope. They are innovative. They are strategic. They have critical thinking skills. They think on their feet. They work well under pressure. These are great qualities that go in a resume, which is also probably how my villain origin story began. So we spoke about what villains are and why we enjoy a good villain or why they are so great. Next, I want to drill down, pun intended, to villains in South cinema. Of course, the villains in Tamil, Telugu, Malayalam, Kannada each have their own characteristics, but I just want to explore some patterns I've observed across these industries as audience and fan. Disclaimer, I know most about Tamil cinema, followed by a decent amount of Telugu and Malayalam cinema. Kannada, not so much. Now, coming into the trends that I have grown up witnessing. Firstly, let's talk about Hollywood villains and number villain ke enna period difference is how we treat the idea of a villain. Hollywood la, the concept of a villain is usually more front and center, say in certain genres, very restricted to superhero movies or cops, secret agent stories like James Bond or Rush Hour. Outside of that, many films don't have a clear-cut bad guy or a villain. Whereas in our cinema, a lot of our stories come from the traditional hero, heroine, villain formula. Our heroes are larger than life and our villains are also really power crazed and really bad people. The other thing that is unique to us is, of course, our own social structures. Broadly speaking, of course, our villains will represent our society. So we see a lot of villains tied to corruption, power, revenge, misbehavior, and a lot of villains are tied to politics. So that's the main difference with Hollywood villains and what is unique to us. Now coming to South Indian cinema is what I grew up watching, starting with Tamil cinema, of course. I've also seen a lot of the story evolution and thereby the villains evolution as well. In the 80s and the 90s, we saw a lot of villains that are just bad. They drink, they smoke, they kachify colors arayam, they gamble, they used to stalk and harass women. Now the heroes just do that. But jokes and Wali aside, hero versus villain was more black and white back in the day. Now they are both more grey. And then 2000s la vandu nariya we saw lines blur between hero and the villain. A lot of heroes started going rogue, literally and figuratively, because munnadi villains were called Poriki, Pokiri, Rowdy, Thug. Now we know every one of those is a character that the hero played. That's pretty much like the high level trends I have seen. Aduthaday, I want to talk about tropes, archetypes or categories of villains that we have seen in our movies and loved. Before going into tropes, I want who are my top villains? Abdine Pata, off the top of my head, would be Neelambari for sure from Padayappa and then Wali Ajit. Even when I watched it at a young age, I do remember really enjoying that role, and every rewatch I have grown to like how good the villain character is and how good Ajit plays it. And then I really like in recent times Nanum Raudidala, Parthiban's character, because it's sama jolly but still quite menacing. So I really like that balance. Lastly, I would say Prakash Raj, like top 4 abdin pata. Prakash Raj. I love him in all villain roles, but konja different solanuna. What traumatized me as a child was actually his role in Asai as the creepy brother-in-law. These are my top 4 villains. Maybe at the end we'll do another roundup. Going into different villain archetypes or tropes. Most of these tropes are really fun, okay? Obviously, I have listed the tropes that I enjoy and find very interesting. Onnu vandu, I've seen a lot of Tirindi Vadara trope. Villain patti pesame, avanga Tirindi Vadara patti pesren. We spoke about how villains are cool, they don't play by the rules and all that. In Tirindi Vadanda, or maybe, oh, I've made a mistake, but I still have hope. Abdindra or feeling varu. No, I feel, yena, yenak in the feeling vandadu when I watched Shivakasi as a child. Prakash's character is really bad, he like ill-treats his family, all of that. But kadasila they'll all in the Tirundivada trope is like a slippery slope because it's not always justified. Sometimes it's even frustrating because what comes to mind is Rajnikant or Panakaran. But I also understand when commercial cinema has to go this all is well that ends well type of thing. On the back of that, I feel like this order is so wrong, but I actually really enjoy films where they make fun of the villain trope itself. Vivek in Freedom does that. In the market scene, when he realizes how much clout his brother-in-law has.
Track அப்படி போகுதா?
Vivek again in Padikadavan, where he'll be a Don, and that whole scene of him going around and doing absolutely nothing as the Don. Vadivelu in Naisekar does that because that's where Nanum Raudida originated even, and I'll talk about that in a sec. But there is also, I really like when they make fun of serious stuff, especially villain trope spoofing. That is a lot of fun. Speaking about Nanum Raudida, I said how I love Parthiban's character, but most characters in that will do a really good job of making fun of the villain.
நீங்க ரவுடி எல்லாம் இல்ல, நீங்க fraud.
Vijay Sethupathi itself, that's his primary arc. Mota Rajendran also, when he shoots the wrong guy at the start. Even Anand Raj, and the padathula da he makes fun of himself, but adukapra he overdid that, like in Dillu Kududdu and all. But anyway, that aside, outright spoof nu paatha, of course we love Tamil Padam 1 and 2, especially Satish in Tamil Padam 2. I really enjoyed, like it's so stupid that it's good.
ஏடா இதெல்லாம் பண்ற? டேய் நான் வில்லன்டா.
Okay, moving on to more serious villain types. Hero as the antidote. One thing that we notice in our cinema is a lot of films, at least Munnadi, we used to see a lot of the hero entry. So they establish the problem, the villain that causes it, and then hero is introduced as the solution to all of this. Sandakodi and the trope irukkum, Tirupachi, even Sami, because he'll be a cop, but and the ura tirtharadhukku da vandirka mari they will show. This is also a unique trope to us because hero feels a moral duty to fix and make things better for the society. In the madri proactive, larger than life confrontation, Hollywood padathula actually vandu superhero films da. Adutha category of villains, which is the Dada Don's villain. I think this is the most common trope we have seen in most, which is they'll have a gang of Adiyale, the trusted team, they'll have the sumo car and then Aruval popping out of it. That is the trope. Some of the famous ones in this category is definitely Sornaka from Dhool, Muthupandi from Gilli,
Hi, chalo.
and then Adi Seshan from Shivaji. Oru line la da solluvanga that he was earlier a goon.
பழைய போலீஸ் ஸ்டேஷன் ரெக்கார்ட் எடுத்து பாரு. ஆதிடா, காசிமேடு ஆதி.
Kasimeda Adi, another Shankar fallacy, but yeah, he became more powerful. Now he's a politician and a businessman, all of that. And actors who did this trope really well, they are goated for this, is Mansur Ali Khan, Anand Raj.
20 தலை 50 கால் 80 கையெடுத்த ஒரே அம்பாள் பொன்னம்பாள்.
And then a little older in time, even Sendamare.
ஏகாம்பரம் பேரை சொன்னா வயசுல இருக்கிற குழந்தை கூட வாயம்.
I used to be really scared of him when he came on screen. So all of these actors are really well known for this trope. Adutha trope vandu corporate criminal. Some corporate criminals we've seen is of course Tani Uruvan.
The name is Siddhartha Abhimanyu. I irritly evolve. I'm not bad, just evil.
He runs pharmaceutical mafia, right? More recently, Rana Dagubati in Vetayan, Neil Nitin Mukesh in Kati, VIP la Amul Baby, VIP 2 la Kajol. Are you seeing a pattern here? Which brings me to, this is not a trope again, but one thing that we have seen for villains is South Indian cinema, a lot of cross casting of Matta state actors for the villain role. So I don't know what is this weird love triangle, Mari villain triangle that we did in the South, but all in good taste. I think now we have gotten great actors who have come and started doing those roles. Telugu industry lende we have Jagpati Babu, Rana Dagubati, Sai Kumar and his brother. I keep getting confused between the two of them. JD in Kacheri Arambam. And then Malayalam industry la paatha, of course, we got Fahad. So a big win for all of cinema and for us. And then Vinayagan in Jailer. But I recently saw him in some older film also. Then Kalabavan Mani, Cochin Hanifa, Shine Tom Chakko, Ashish Vidyarthi. He's like a shared treasure between all industries, as is like Nazar, Prakash Raj, all of these people. And then Kannada la I know Kishore we got from Polladavan onwards, so also a big win for Tamil cinema. And then all of our cinema also has North Indian actors as villains, of course. Like we said, Kattila, Neil Nitin Mukesh, Vidyut Jamwal in Tupaki.
I don't know who you are, where you are. I'm coming for you. But once I get to you, I will kill you.
and now recently Madarasi, and then Sanjay Dutt in Leo, Bobby Deol in Kangua, and then more recently Jananayagan. Anurag Kashyap in a couple of films. I think Anurag really likes South Indian cinema, so I think he's here to stay. And then Arjun Rampal in Bagan Kesari Telugu version. Another big win for South is Sonu Sood. Of course, his scariest I would say is Arundhati, and the opposite of that was his role in Chandramukhi. I think he's done a lot of Telugu films more than Tamil. Atadu also he was really good. And then Pradeep Rawat I wanted to just talk about because in the last 1-2 years I watched Sai, which is Rajamouli's film, and I realized he's really scary in that. I of course know him from Gajini, and then Baba Sehgal also in like random casting in Acham Enbadu Madameda, and then Milind Soman in Paya. So these are the many examples I could think of. I'm sure I'm missing out on a lot more. And then we also had foreign villains. Adila vande I couldn't think of that many. Singamla Danny, Era Marivula Dongli, both Surya films. More recently, Jagame Tandiramla, that Game of Thrones actor was there. I don't know if I'm missing out more. Like 90s lala, were there any foreign villains? I would love to know. Coming back to tropes itself, a very endearing trope for me is when they show villains as humans, or when they show their point of view, that you start rooting for them. Because they have flaws, yes, but I see it, I sympathize with them.
காட்டான் ராமத்தான் ஒடுக்கப்பட்டவன் நான் எங்க நீங்க எங்க உங்க கடவுள் எங்கன்னு நினைச்சேன்.
Ravanan had done that really well. At some point, you're only empathizing with him more than the supposed hero, which is Prithviraj. Vikram Vedha, of course.
ஒரு கதை சொல்லிட்டு போலான்னு வந்தேன் சார்.
உன்ன மாதிரி ஆளுங்களுக்குலாம் ஒரே கதை தானே.
எப்படி சார்? என் கண்ணிலே படம் பார்த்தேன் சார்.
Whole of Vada Chennai. Another film where I really root for the villain is 2.2, Pakshi Rajan. You really feel bad because, you know, he's just trying to save the bird. Society made him that. Nandini in Ponniyin Selvan is another example. Virumandila literally try to show it with the Rashomon effect. So you kind of see different perspectives. One question I have is this like overcorrection? Because in recent times, you know, we're seeing a trend of villains being glorified. It's just something to think about. இது வந்து we spoke about good thief அப்படின்னு வச்சுக்கிட்டா அடுத்தது வந்து bad cop. Lot of cops as villains. The scariest one for me is போக்கிரியில Inspector Govind.
இன்னையில இருந்து நீ வாட்ச்மேன், வீட்டுக்கு மட்டுமில்ல ஸ்ருதிக்கும்.
I really hated his character. And then Riaz Khan does a lot of these cop ones as well. One I could remember was Adavan. And then Maanadila, the iconic role that S.J. Surya did.
வந்தா சுட்டா செத்தா ரிப்பீட் இன்னைக்கு வருவான் சுடுவான் சாவா ரிப்பீட் முடியல தலைவரே.
Shivaji Virumandi ரெண்டு படத்துலயுமே Shanmugarajan as cops, very different but very nice in their own right. அதுக்கப்புறம் மங்காத்தால வந்து I mean Mangata is the story of an anti-hero, but அதுலயும் villain னு பார்த்தா I would call out Arjun, ACP Prithvi he plays, and then Maariல Vijay Yesudas, Super Deluxeல Bucks, Iratta படத்துல வந்து Jojo Joseph, he plays the hero and the villain, meaning he plays a dual role. The next trope is villains amongst us. So villains exist in our ecosystem, they are within us, between us, all of that. I think Malayalam cinema does a really good job of this trope, especially in thrillers. I think they fit the best in thrillers. Sukshma Darshanila, spoiler alert, the party is the villain. Again, like I said, Iratta also. And then this is not Malayalam, but a Malayalam maker, Marisen, had a very nice layered take on this, because Vadivelu is on the, again, spoiler alert, Vadivelu is on a killing spree, but he is actually attacking the real bad guys. And then Kadasila, there is also a villain, which is Fahad's friend. And then back in Tamil, I think Rakshasan and Porthoril both had a villain amongst us done really well. The next one I want to talk about is unsuspecting villains.
Plot twist.
Basically, you're not expecting this person to be the villain in the story, but they are, and that's such a cool payoff. The king of this genre, I would say, is K.V. Anand, because in Ko, Ajmal's character, in Matran, the father character, in Ayan, Chitti's character. And then there are a few other films also. One I could think of was Snegidhiye padathila Tabu's character, and Jyotika in Pachekili Muthucharam, Prabhudeva in Goat most recently, and then Sonu Sood in Athadu also we spoke about. Yeah, all of them are unsuspecting villains. I really enjoy that. Okay, the next trope, this is a fun one. Sometimes a film does not have a clearly defined villain because the story doesn't demand it, it's a romance or whatever. But when they meme or popular culture, what has happened is we've started to call the real villain abdine. So on the trope or fun category in Pata, a most common one we hear is Jesse in Vinay Tandi Varuvaya. And then 96 so I've actually seen a few memes where they say, oh, Trisha's character is the villain, but I don't think Janu is the villain. Janu's friend, like in the flashback, she doesn't, relay that message properly. She's the real villain. And then Emton Maganla vandu, Nazir. Like, he's very scary in that film because you really hate him. You don't like what he's doing to the son, to Bharat. But he's not a villain, but he's the real villain. Also, Friends padathila, Devayani is actually the real villain because she'll only push Surya and Vijay's characters away. I think he's the reason this guy will end up in a coma. So I think Devayani is the real villain in Friends. Okay, the last two categories that I have is heroes as villains. In our cinema, I think we found a really nice loophole. I don't know if loophole is the right word, but heroes ku yaar tough kudukran paatha hero veda.
I'm a hero. I'm a villain.
Because then they play double role and come as the villain. And I have no complaints. I feel like every single big hero that has done this trope has done a fantastic job. We already spoke about Ajit in Wali. Vijay in ATM is also a very fun role. Kamal Hassan has done it several times, most notably Alavandan and Dasavataram.
Will cost you more, and I'll need a translator.
I love Fletcher's character and all the other 9 characters also. It's so enjoyable to watch. Of course, Kamal is Kamal. And then Superstar does a fantastic job as Chitty. Everything about Chitty is so enjoyable. He's so scary. He's so iconic. And then Surya also does a very, very nice job in 24. There is so much talk online about how he's so scary and menacing, and it's one of his best roles, and I agree. The range in that film is also so phenomenal, and having that sort of fear-inducing presence is super iconic. Vikram most famously in Onion as the 3 characters, but especially as Onion itself. I feel like this really speaks to our sensibilities because I really like my hero. Who can match a hero na? Hero Veda. So if something happens to the bad character, we are still happy because the good character triumphs. So it's a win-win in every sense. You see more of your hero, so you're doubly happy or triply happy even. Finally, all's well, and the good character always triumphs. So I feel like that really works in our cinema and our sensibilities. So last category, women in male-dominated field. So women villains. Before talking about specific examples, I want to say women are most often shown to lust after men. Adu oru trope. And then women are just strong-headed, or they adhigama kovapadra pombale. Adha avangaloda ore koraendra mari. They are just very strong-headed. They have opinions. I guess that makes them a villain. Regardless, I think we have gotten so many great female iconic villains. Neelamari is my favorite.
எப்படி இருக்கா என் வீட்டு வேலைக்காரி.
And then also as Maggie, again, I don't think Panchadantram she's a villain, but even that, like as a fun villain, she's really good. Apro Shriya Reddy in Timur is also like pretty famous. Trisha in Kodi, and then Sornaka in Dhool. Andrea in Tupparivalan. She really uses sex as a weapon. Ramadri, she literally uses it to kill the guy. And then Reema Sen in both Vallavan and Ayrathil Oruvan. I think it's very different because Vallavan, she's just like this ego maniac. But in Ayrathil Oruvan, she has a purpose. She's also like unsuspecting villain, like that'll be a reveal. And Parthen Rasithenla Simran as well. So these are some great female villains that I could think of. I'm sure there are more. These are all the categories, and before we close this segment, I want to talk about the greatest actors of all times for villain. Abdin Edthukita, Prakash Raj has done most tropes that we have spoken about, if not all. So a Singham villain also, he's great. He's great as Vasul Raja villain, even though it's not a villain. And he's great as Muthupandi. He's great as Asai Lavara character. There's also this other movie, Appu Apdindra oru padam with Prashant. He plays a pimp and he does a great job there also. Anything that Prakash Raj touches, it's iconic. And then S.J. Surya, in more recent times, I would say he has grown to be one of the greatest villain actors. Then going back in time, Raghuvaran is one of the most iconic actors and villains. I think if he still were here today, we would have so much more. But he still left a very strong legacy. Bashala.
Anthony. Mark Anthony.
Kadalanla kuda he's pretty scary. And then Arunachalam, he's one of the 3 villains. And then early memory for me is Raja Chinnaroja. He'll play a man gone astray. And then Kota Srinivas Rao in Telugu played a lot of iconic villain characters. For me, of course, his favorite is Ko.
Police!
At the end, I said I'll do a roundup, but maybe I will not repeat my favorite actors, but I will do different types of villains. So, creepiest villain, Abdine Edithikta, Pokiri, Inspector Govind, I would still say. Best, Neelambari. Favorite villain, actually, favorite villain, I will say Prakash Raj. I know it's not a character, but he's my favorite villain actor. And then offbeat, konjam different abdin paatha, actually, Nagesh in Apurva Sagodharargal is a pretty great character because it's just Nagesh doing his thing, but now he's a villain that's so enjoyable to watch.
என்ன அது பாதி தான் கொண்டு வந்திருக்கிற பாக்கி 3 அடி எங்க
Awesome. We are at the final segment of today's episode, and this is a technical segment.
It's getting too technical.
I love doing this. In the first episode in Hype Culture, I spoke about the Gartner hype cycle. And the madri idu oru pudu framework that I've come up with to plot the villains. Let's get into it. So this is the villain graph. Along the x-axis, this one that you see here, it's their motivation, which is, are they fueled by self-interest, or do they have a greater purpose because of which they are a villain, or is it a bit of both? And then y-axis or vertical axis pathina, it's the villain's strength or what they use. Do they use brain to attack? Do they use brawn or like physical strength, physical power to attack, or is it a bit of both? So they pretty in the quadrants work out the abdin patha, like what is their strength? They could also use brawn, but their strength is the brain. They could also use brain, but their strength is brawn apdina. They are put in these categories. I think purpose is a lot more clearer to define than what is the method they use. On the right now, you can see that I have picked some famous Tamil villains. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to drag and drop them into the different quadrants that they fall. First, let's start with Mark Antony from Basha. Avaroda motivation ennan paatha, I think he is very self-interest driven, like he has a lot of ego, power trip, andha madri da. I don't think he has any greater purpose. He comes under self-interest, but inge enganu paatha, I think he has more brawn than brain. I'm not saying he's not brainy, but what he uses to attack abdinu paatha, actually he uses more of brawn. Adiyalangala vittu anupardu and all that. He does a little bit of scheming also. When we talk more examples, you will probably make sense of why I'm placing him here. We'll take Vidyut Jamwal from Tupaki. Avaroda character, he definitely has a greater purpose or ideology that he abides by. He uses a lot of brain. That is way of attacking. Of course, towards the end, he attacks with muscle also. I would say his strength is his brain. He's very scheming. I will put him here. He's brain-led. Apdi potikla. Muthupandi is, I think, definitely self-interest. There is no greater purpose. He's the most powerful man. He wants Dhanalakshmi. So it's all self-interest driven, and he's a lot of brawn. So he falls here very easily. Neelambari, I don't think she has a greater purpose. She just has self-interest and she uses a lot of brain. How she manipulates Padayappa, how she plays these power games. She uses his daughter against him and her own nephew. Let's talk Trisha and Cody. Definitely a bit of both. So she has greater purpose, which is her political aspirations, and self-interest Koda, because she has a lot of ego and power trip. And what she uses is a lot of brain. Finally, she uses a little bit of brawn also. She literally kills people. So I would actually place her somewhere here. Not too much. She's more brain. She's manipulative. Her strength again is brain. Chitti. Chitti is definitely more self-interest. Greater purpose, not so much, but he wants to get Sana, but he also wants to rule the humans type of thing. I would say he is a bit of both. More towards brain. Yeah, I think he would fall somewhere in between. I think that's the beauty of this. Anane Solikrem, but that's the beauty of this. It just sees where in this graph they get plotted. Very quickly, let's do Pakshi Raja. He had greater purpose. He's very sweet and pavam, and he uses a bit of both. Of course, he starts with brain, but he uses a lot of brawn also as he builds his army and all of that. So I think he falls there. Siddharth Abhimanyu, his purpose is self-interest driven. He has greater purpose also, but he's very, very smart, and his strength is his brain. Vijay Sethupathi from Pete, he would fall here because he uses brawn only. Since he's conforming to his party's ideology, I'd put him a little more towards purpose, but he's egotistical and all of that. Atreya is a little more greater purpose, but he uses both brain and brawn. Definitely more driven by brain, so I would put him there. S.J. Surya's character in Manadu, Dhanush Kodi, I don't think he's there for greater purpose. He is someone who definitely is a good mix of brain and brawn. He has to figure it out and all of that, but he uses physical strength to also attack the hero. Onion, I know he's not a typical villain. He's for the greater good. He's a great example for greater purpose and someone with brawn. Yes, he uses brain, but I think his strength is brawn. His method of attacking is that he kills people. So strength in that sense as a villain is brawn, and he does it for a greater purpose, which is literally the betterment of society. Wali Ajit would be self-interest and brain. That's it. He's so simple because he only has vested interest in his sister-in-law, and that's all he wants, and he uses a lot of brain tricks to identify her, or he tries to. And lastly, I think Sonu Sood is one of the most menacing villains. Let me make him a little bit big. He falls somewhere here. Because in Arundhati, he's super menacing. He does have greater purpose. He has a lot of self-interest. He uses his brain as well as brawn. He's overall very menacing. He'll fall somewhere in the middle. I had to really struggle to only pick a handful of villains. I also picked in a way that I can show the variance or the range of this graph. So I hope this was fun for you. It was so much fun for me to put together. I had a graph and then I had a Venn diagram, a lot of different versions and iterations of this, and finally I got this version. So I hope you like it. Try to play it at home, pause and play some of your favorite villains on this graph. Yeah, I'll hope to do more of these. This is the favorite part of podcasting for me. Okay, that brings us really to the end of today's episode. I hope you had fun. Like I said at the beginning, this was a lot of fun for me to put together. Please write to me about your favorite villains. I want this to be a conversation about cinema. Please write to me on Twitter or Instagram if you're enjoying these episodes, and I will see you on the next one.